Well, he makes it so clear. He says, if you try to save your life, you will lose it. But if you lose your life for my sake, you will find it.
Francis, what are some of the benefits to us as the family of faith when we obey God's call to put others first, to carry one another's burdens?
There's so many benefits. I mean, Jesus says it's more blessed to give than to receive. But I think one of my favorite passages is in Isaiah 58, when he says that, when you care for the hungry and you bring the homeless poor into your house, he says, then you shall call and the Lord will answer. You shall cry and he will say, here I am. So there's a sense in which God says, okay, I'm looking at the people who care for the poor. And when they cry out to me, I'm going to be, here I am. It's about this relationship. I mean, we don't realize that prayer is very conditional. Answer to prayer is conditional. God doesn't just answer every prayer. He clearly says, look, if you don't believe, I'm not going to listen. If you don't treat your wife as a fellow heir of the grace of life, your prayers are going to be hindered. And here he's saying it's when you care for the poor that when you cry out to me, I'm going to say, here I am. And I love that. I mean, isn't that the greatest thing we could have on this earth is God Almighty, whenever we cry out to him, he's like, yep, it's Kirk. I know what he's done for the poor. What do you want, Kirk?
Wow.
What's better than that?
I can't think of much better than that. To have God on speed dial and we're like, okay, here's where we're at. These are the supplies we need. This is the backup that we're looking for. Please open up the heavens and pour it out right now. Where are you seeing God most at work through your eyes, from your experiences? Where do you really see awesome things taking place?
As horrible as the situation is in Myanmar right now with that military coup, God has just decided to bless that nation as far as their faith and the growth in the Christian world. And I know we kind of jump from one crisis to another, and so sometimes we forget certain countries. But having been to Burma a couple times myself and seeing the receptivity of the gospel, and now seeing those people who are newer believers really sharing the gospel amidst the poverty and all the fear. God's doing great things in some really crazy places like Iran. I was in Israel a couple of weeks ago. I mean, just there's a lot of powerful things going on around the world.
It's like the twists and turns in the advance of the gospel and the expansion of the kingdom are so unexpected, which is always how the greatest stories go. And over time, we've seen how not only America sends gospel missionaries out to the rest of the world, but now we're seeing these places send gospel missionaries back to America and the West. Yeah. Because we've become so apathetic and complacent. We've got this treasure and we just sort of like, that's okay. We're kind of over it. In fact, let's try some paganism. That sounds new and interesting.
It's so hard. It's so hard to live in a comfortable setting. It's so hard to have our houses in the U.S. not feel like homes, to really be thinking about our eternal home. I mean, it's the enemy. The enemy is trying to get us to think this is it. This is it for us. And just settle down. I don't know. I had some friends who came over from Iran, and they just says, we can't live here because it's like this satanic lullaby going on that's lulling us to sleep. And I thought, oh, that's such a perfect phrase for what can go on. We just lose sight of the invisible and the eternal, because there's a lot of fun things that we can be doing here.
Francis, some might be listening to us right now and thinking like, wow, Francis is really radical. I mean, he's really talking about not being comfortable in his home and we're trying to decorate our home and make it more comfortable. Do you see yourself as radical, or is this just normal biblical Christianity?
I think it's very normal. I feel like I am weak. I don't want to be a coward. I get distracted. I do not feel radical at all. I just think sometimes when it's like, I tell the story of when I was in college and I went to Hong Kong, and my grandma was just introducing me to everyone, and everyone there was going, "Wow, he's so big," and I'm like 5'9", but to them I was huge, because at that time everyone was so short. I think before they exported milk over there, but it's just this whole idea of, yeah, I look big here, but that's because the people are so small. And I feel like sometimes in the US, anyone that sacrifices anything seems radical or like this amazing Christian, when the reality is it because we've all grown so complacent?
Francis, you've used the word sacrifice quite a few times since we've been talking, and going into cultures where people look for opportunities to sacrifice. Jesus said, if you want to come after me and follow me, take up your cross. And when I think about taking up a cross, I mean, if you're talking about if Jesus was talking about a cross, that's a Roman torture device, and you end up dying. You don't come back from that. That doesn't sound like an exciting invitation. That's kind of a tough sell. What's in it for us when we take up our cross and follow Jesus?
Well, he makes it so clear. He says, if you try to save your life, you will lose it. But if you lose your life for my sake, you will find it. So there's something, it's faith. It's this promise. Yeah, I can't describe it for everyone, but he says, whatever you sacrifice on the earth, I will give you, 100-fold in this life and in the life to come. And there's some faith involved. I can't promise you, if you send in $100 check for the poor, that you'll get 100,000 the next day. But you might. I don't know what that reward is going to look like. And Hebrews 11 explains that some people don't see it in their earthly lifetime. There's a reward that's going to come after for them. It's going to be different for each person. We just have to trust his promises.
Francis, do you think that the rewards that come from giving are dependent upon our motives? Like, what I mean by that is, for example, if I'm giving because I know that God's going to return back 100-fold, is that the wrong motive? And should I only expect return if I'm not really caring about it and only caring for other people?
Well, first of all, 1 Corinthians 13 tells us that it doesn't matter if you give everything up and even die. If it's not motivated by love, it profits you nothing. Okay, so
Great
we have to be thinking, do I love these people? Do I care? Like, I've seen kids like starve to death. Like, I've seen a mom crying over basically a skeleton that just died and is going nuts. And for me to feel nothing and do nothing, that would be concerning. I mean, I hope that we have at least that much compassion to go, okay, what can I do? How can I sacrifice for them? So it has to be motivated by, I actually love these people and I want their best. And it's not out of guilt. It's not out of just pure reward, although Christ does talk about it. And so it's okay to talk about that.